I am going to put up a video to go through the steps that you'll need to do to set up versioning on an Unreal Engine 4 project, and I'm going to do that using the Unreal Engine 4 integration with Git, as well as a new thing that Git and Bitbucket, as well as, or sorry, GitHub and Bitbucket have gone in for, I think, as well as maybe Visual Studio, Git support. I think that they are also trying to support this, but it's called Git LFS, which is large file storage, and that'll be a solution for anybody who needs to version files which are too large or don't generally fit Git's version control workflow. This could be 3D models, textures, or in the case of Unreal Engine, U assets and U maps, so on and so forth. So we're going to need a few things first. First, we're going to need the GitHub desktop, which if you are comfortable just using a Git shell, you won't need, so feel free to just use a Git shell. So we're going to go get that from here, so you can just go to desktop.github.com as of the time of making this video, I think the 29th of October, and you'll just download that and install it. That'll also install a Git client on your computer, so you should be good to go once you do that. And we're also going to need to install the Git large file storage client. So just download that and install it, and once you have those things installed, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and open up this, and in the tutorial you can open a Git shell. And I just say the tutorial because you need to run the install for Git LFS. So you're going to open up this command shell, and this will be the only, working with LFS will be the only time you need to use the shell, and then once you have it set up you won't need to do it again. So just follow a few instructions, and if you're comfortable with using the shell, then great, this will come really second nature. If not, then you will want to maybe watch this a few times. I'll try and explain what's happening. So once you have GitHub desktop, you can right click on any repository, and it really doesn't matter at this point. And what we're going to do is we're going to open a Git shell, and in this shell we're going to follow these instructions, just step one. So Git LFS install, and I already have it installed, so I'm not going to run it, but once you run it, it will attach Git LFS to your Git client, and once it's attached you'll have access to the Git LFS commands. So once we do that, we can close out this shell, and we are ready to create a repository. So what we're going to do is minimize this for a second, and we're going to go to our Epic launcher and launch our engine, which currently I'm using 4.13.1. And we're going to start a new project, and I'm going to leave it blank, and I'm going to say no starter content, and I'm going to call this test for Git LFS. Create project. It'll create it. Alright, so we have a project created, and this will have put the project in wherever your default project directory is. So we're going to go ahead and minimize this for a second, and we're going to go back to the GitHub client here, and we're going to click on this little plus up in the left of the corner here, and under create we're going to find a local path, and we're going to create a Git repository in this local path. So for me that's going to be Unreal Projects, and I'm going to find, what did I call it, test for Git LFS, and you take the top level, the project level directory, and we're going to hit OK. And we're going to call this test for Git LFS. It doesn't really have to match, but it just makes sense for it to match. Oops, sorry. No, what we want to do, I think, is this. I did do this before I started this video, but okay, well, we'll give it a shot. Create repository. See if it does it. Let's take a look. I may have fuddled that. Test yes. Nope, there it is. Content, all of this is set up. Perfect. And you will also now have a .git. I'm showing hidden folders so you can see this, but there will be a .git folder. You shouldn't have to mess with that at any point. But if you click on this, it'll show all of the files that you now have the ability to add in a Git commit. And this might be a good time to talk about what Git is actually doing. Git is a version control program created by St. Torvalds that allows you to keep a copy of the state of a project, tracking as many files in that project as you want. Every time you commit, it creates a new snapshot of that project. And what that allows you to do is every time you make any sort of change, however minor, you make a commit, and it captures the snapshot of this new commit, and it keeps the snapshot of all of the previous commits. So that way, if you ever realize, oh no, I really messed something out, you can check out a previous snapshot. And it does this for every file it tracks. So you can actually check out a single file, and this allows you to go back to a state prior to where you screwed something up, or maybe a state where something was slightly different and you want to go a different direction than you actually went. The problem with this is because it saves these snapshots. If you're working with anything other than text files, traditionally it's been very hard to version it. So if you have a large object file, then you're going to have a problem because it wants to take a snapshot every time you say edit the model, the 3D model, and that can be a lot of very large snapshots which add up, and the repositories are not really built to hold this. So Git has a new feature called Git LFS. So I have I purchased the 50 gigs of Git LFS storage, which is a mirror alongside the repository that Git LFS is set up in. So we're going to get that set up now so that we can track certain file extensions, so that what will happen is in the normal Git workflow, you don't have to change anything from your normal Git workflow once you have it set up. It's going to take anything of that extension, and if it's tracked by Git, then instead of pushing it up to the repository as the full file, it will push the large file up to the mirrored repository and push a pointer up to the normal repository. And then when you do a git pull, it pulls the pointers, reads through all the pointers, and then pulls all of your large files down at their most recent version. So you can version things like JPEGs, PNGs, FBXs, you name it. You think of a large file, you can version it. It's really pretty general. So let's get it set up. Right now here's our project. We've got all the files that we could track. We haven't published it yet, and I don't want to publish it yet because I want to go ahead and set up LFS first. So we're going to go ahead and open up the Git shell again, and we're going to follow the next two steps here. We're not going to do PSD, but and I'll tell you why in a minute. That's not a file type that we're really going to be worried about, and we don't have any of them. So what we're going to do is very simply type Git LFS, which is basically to signify that we are using the LFS commands, and we're going to say track. And if we hit enter, this will tell us everything that we are currently tracking with large file storage. And that is nothing. So what we're going to do is say Git LFS track, and in our case, I'm going to add an FBX file in a second here. So I'm going to do .fbx. So now if I do Git LFS track, it'll show that in the past we have FBXs tracked right here. And I also want to add a few more things. So Git LFS track, I'm going to do star dot, oh, and sorry, the star means anything followed by dot, then the extension. So this is any file, wildcard, followed by, and then in this case I'm going to do u map. And I'm going to do the same thing. So I press up on the arrow key to bring back my last command. I'm going to do u asset. And this is important here to spell these correctly. If you misspell a file extension, then you add, so if I had said fxb, say, and then I added a bunch of fbx's, it's not going to track those, and it's going to push those up to your repository, and you're going to blow your repository limit really quickly. You'll have to delete the repository and start again. Or something. Generally, it's very difficult to go back in history since the key to Git is that it never forgets anything. So once you've pushed something up and it's tracked, that snapshot will be there forever. So if you have a gigabyte large video file and you try and track an MP5 and it's really an MP4 and you push it up, then you're going to have a gigabyte of storage on your repository, which is really intended for megabytes. So that would be a problem. I think GitHub, if you're using them, would probably email you and let you know that that's too large for a repository. So I'm going to track that. I'm going to Git LFS track star.u project. So what are these U files that I'm tracking here? Well, UMaps is the extension of the Unreal Engine maps. UAsset is the extension of all of the Unreal Engine assets. And that means once you import something, it transforms it into a U asset, and then that, of course, has like a subtype of, blueprint, static mesh, texture, so on and so forth. But what's nice is once you import these to Unreal Engine, they all get tagged with a file extension of U asset. So tracking star.uasset allows you to track all of the imported file types that you're going to have in a project. So we'll go ahead and say git LFS track. We can now see that we're tracking FBXs, we're tracking UMaps, we're tracking UAssets, and it looks like this didn't quite catch there. So let's make sure that, what am I doing wrong? It's telling me that it's already supported. Test .u project already supported. Well, I'm not as worried about the U project. It's usually a fairly small file. It points to the correct file so that the editor can bootstrap everything. But I'm not sure why it's not listing as one of the tracked paths. Oh, I know why. It's because... No? Okay. Well, maybe there's only one, so that's fine. But it is tracking, it looks like, right here. Anything is tracking the one file. Okay, that's fine. Okay, so we're done here. That's all you need. And so for somebody who's used Git a lot, this might seem like very simple and like there must be more to do. Like you have to track them, especially for Git LFS. But no, that's it. This is all you have to do. So now if you have a file that's an FBX, all you have to do is git add that file, whatever it is, and then you would do git commit -n, always leave a message please, and then you will git push origin master just like usual, and it will actually figure it all out for you. You don't have to do anything else. So we're done here, and we actually don't have an origin master, so that's the next thing we'll set up. We're going to go ahead and publish this, and we're going to say test for Git LFS, and we're going to go ahead and publish it just to get the publish commit going. This can take a second, but maybe it looks like I don't have, oh, there is a commit. Why is this not letting me publish? Test LFS. Well, we can always add a blank commit. So if you need to add a commit for whatever reason, we can just say changed Git attributes. So you just click on Git attributes, say changed Git attributes. So this, by the way, is the file where those extensions get tracked. So commit to master, So now we've got a couple of commits. None of these have been published. So I want to publish the whole thing. Publish. Why am I not able to publish this? Huh. There we go. You have to select your... I can't, obviously, I don't want to publish this to Epic Games. So I select my Bitbucket, or pardon, GitHub username, and now I can publish this. And that will create the remote repository where it tracks it on GitHub. And if I do a hard refresh here, and we look for public, there we go. And this will have our Git attributes and our Git ignore file and nothing else. And the reason we don't have anything else is because we haven't added anything else. So what we want to do now is add the project file. So let's uncheck that. Scroll all the way down. And we're going to add this project file. I think that's all we want to add for now. So we'll say added project file. Added project file. And we're going to commit to master, and you'll see that this adds a little circle here. So these two dots represent commits that have been published up, have been pushed up to the remote. This is a commit that has been made, but has not been pushed up. If you end up with branches, so let's say somebody makes a commit and is different than yours, you'll see all of the branches down here, and you can merge and so on and so forth as needed. But in this case, we're just dealing with one. There's a lot of good documentation on Git branching and how to do that properly, so I'm not going to go over that. But so if you hit sync, this will effectively do a git pull, git rebase, and then git push. It does all of those together. So you can sync. And I want to talk about something here because we're now pushing up to our remote. Okay, it's pushed up. So now if I refresh this, you'll see I now have this U project file. And what you would expect is it to be however large and to be in the repository. But what's actually happened is Git LFS has taken over, and it says here, stored with Git LFS. And you'll notice that it is literally only 274 bytes. It's not even a single kilobyte, because this is literally just a pointer that points to the actual file, which is now saved in the mirror, which is just a storage volume that is in GitHub as well. And then if you were to need to pull that down, you can do that. Now there's a lot else you can do. You can do a lot of stuff on the shell manually. So let's get some stuff added and get this hooked up. So the first thing I want to do here is get source control hooked up here. So if you're in the editor, you will go, and I want to see how long I've been going. 18 minutes. So I'm going to try and wrap this up. Let's get this integrated into Unreal Engine, and then you'll be set. So I'm going to go up here to source control, and I'm going to hit connect to source control, and I'm going to select Git, which is still in beta, I suppose. It seems to work pretty well, but that's fine. And it will automatically find the Git path, and if it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I can see if I can solve that, but it should automatically find your Git path. It should be something like C program files git bin git executable, and you'll accept the settings. And once we've done that, now we're hooked up to version control, and I can do stuff as usual. Let's say I create for local testing. I don't want to save that one to version control. It has this little question. It says I don't know if I want to track this or not. I'm not going to do anything with it now. And if I create a new level, this is final version level. And this is what I do. I want the final version level to be tracked. So you go down here and source control, and you can mark for add. So now it's tracking this, and it has some differences. So you'll see there's a little plus there that says, hey, this is tracked. It's got some differences. And you can go up to this, and you can submit to source control. And this is where it gets really cool, is so far I've been adding everything by checking off. If I want to, I could find that in this list here, and I could click check, and I could make a commit here. But now I can actually just and I don't even have to have this open because it's doing it all in the directory structure. This is just a client that makes it easier. But I can also now do this in Unreal Engine. Once you get that uproject file added, I can now go submit to source control. And it's going to tell me, oh, I've got one file. This will be for an add. And I can say added final map. That's the changeless description. And then I'm going to hit OK. And it'll go, and look at that. I added that. Now, it is not currently pushed up. So when I said that you don't have to do it through this, you don't. And it will keep a local history all you want. And if you never want to actually publish this to a remote, let's say you don't have a team, you don't ever need to push it to a remote, and it will just keep a series of commits as you change things. So if I go and let's see, I'm in the final version, and let's say I change this, and let's say I add an empty actor here. Then I can now hit check out modified files. And it's going to ask me to save. Oh, I'm not in the final level. That's why. So let's go ahead and open up this, and I'll hit don't save because I was just in some default map. All right, I'm in the final level. And let's say I add a point light and a cube. So now you can see I've got this point light and cube. And I'm going to go ahead, file, save all. And now you notice that it wants to know, should I add this? And you can either add it or not. That's for local testing. I'm not going to. But it also puts a check mark here. It says, hey, this is checked out. You've made a change to it, but it hasn't been committed yet. So what we're going to do is go to source control, and I can either check in this particular file, or I can do here, submit to source control, which does a check-in for this, and I can uncheck this. Now, in this case, and this will not track this local testing map. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to show you how to do it this way. So you're going to go check in, and it'll bring up the same thing, but only with the one file that you want to check in. So if you're editing just a map, you're a level designer, I've just edited this map, I haven't changed any assets, those are all provided by the modeler, and I've just put them into the map, and it's ready to go up so they can take a look at what I've done. I'll be like, added light and cube to map, and I'll go OK. There we go, and it's committed, and so now you can go here and you can see now I have another commit. So this was just to create the final map, and this was and start tracking it, and this was to add those cubes. So now if I hit sync, again, Git LFS is going to take control because this is a .umap file. This is what is included in that. And once we do that, and it's synced, I can now go back over to GitHub here, here, and if I go ahead and go here, now I have content. You can see it's grabbed the content directory because that's where this lives, and I've tracked it. And if you click on this, you'll see that it is stored again with Git LFS, and it is only 11.6 kilobytes. So this is really easy. I will make a couple of very quick notes. So first of all, if you want to use Git LFS to version control through Unreal's built-in integration, every party that is going to pull this repository down needs to have Git LFS installed. So that means install the Git client, then go in and download the Git LFS client and run Git LFS install prior to pulling down the repository. If you don't do that, it will only pull down the pointers, and you will not get your files, and it will confuse it, and you might have to start over, and maybe it'll work, and you'll get got off scot-free, and you can install after you've pulled it down, and then the more you know about how to run Git on the shell, the better, because at that point you could do Git LFS pull, which is essentially just pulling based on the pointers, so that's different than git pull. If you do a git pull and LFS is installed, it will automatically do a git LFS pull, but if you've done git pull and then installed git LFS, you'll need to run, I'm not sure how that would work, but try and get it installed prior to getting somebody else downloaded. The other thing I will note is that if you have a lot of changes, let's say you started tracking a lot of large assets, it doesn't make your internet faster. Putting the pointer up is really simple, but uploading or pulling large assets is going to take time. So do this in small bursts. If you've added a new asset, check it in immediately and synchronize that. If you do have a lot, just know it is going to take a long time to upload that, and it's going to take a long time to download that. If your internet flickers at all, it will actually cause it to fail, and it will tell you that synchronization failed. And if you're doing this out of the shell, it will say that it crashed and it failed. But what it is using is something, and I don't know if it's rsync or not, but it's actually using a safe synchronization tool. So what you can do is just keep running it over and over. Every time it fails, just run it again. And this is why I say you should try and do it in smaller bursts. But I had it at one point, I think I had about 2 gigs, and I was testing to see like how robust it was. I had 2 gigs, it was like 15 or 20 files, and it would, I would watch it and it would say like uploading files, 1 through 20, and it would get, and it would crash. But the next time, or a few later, I would notice, it says uploading file 1 of 20, uploading file 1, and it would crash. And then a while later, I noticed it's now out of 19, and then 18. And eventually, it synchronized all of them, and it did it without corruption. I was able to pull on my wife's computer, pull down the repository, and there was no corruption. So it will safely push them up eventually, but I would recommend doing it one file. So if you add a large texture that's going to be used in the game, say check that in as a single commit, added this texture, and then synchronize. Commits are cheap. You can have 1,000,000 of them and it makes no difference. It's better to have a lot of small commits than one big commit that is complicated and fails and is hard to revert. If you say add 10 textures and then you realize you don't want this texture to be like this because you made some changes, if you revert, then you're going to revert all 10. So if you're making changes, do it to one thing, check it in, push that up, especially if it's large files because of the fact that it needs to upload and download. I think with that, that's everything. I hope that this was helpful to some people. This makes versioning really easy. Anytime that you start working, you can come in here and just synchronize, and then open up Unreal Engine and everything will be synchronized. It is worth noting that unless you have a special plugin for Unreal, which I think you can get on the marketplace, you don't want to work on the same asset. That means you can use the assets. So if somebody is, let's say this cube is a blueprint, I can now edit this map and put a bunch of these blueprints in the map, and I'm not actually changing this asset. So I can use it, but I don't want to edit this blueprint if somebody else has this open and is working on it. So it takes a little bit of coordination. And conversely, the person who's working on this blueprint should be testing it in a different map. If I'm editing this map, they should be testing in a different map. It is worth noting, though, if you're working on a big map and you have multiple level designers, that you can use the levels. Levels are individually tracked. So if you have a new level, create new, food. This level, which is sub-level of this persistent level, you'll see this right here. It is individually tracked as a UMap. And so these can be all in the same level that's a larger map that then streams these in. So one option if you're working on a large map is to have a lot of these persistent levels. I recommend that anyways. And then just say, I'm working on the waterfall area. Please don't touch anything in the waterfall level. And then the person can like toggle that off and say like, okay, I'm not gonna touch that. And they can even lock it if they want. They can just say locked. I can't add anything to it. I can't take anything away because I know you're working on that, and I'll work on foo or whatever it is. That's a really useful feature of Unreal Engine. So with that, I'm going to leave you questions in the comments. I'll try and follow up and answer. Otherwise, have a great day and enjoy programming.